If you like these videos and you want to see them a day before they go up on YouTube, head over to LBRY. It's an awesome, decentralized alternative to YouTube, and I absolutely love it. Hey everybody, it's your friend and your guy, Gardiner. I'm here today with a sort of reaction video. Friend of the show, ChrisTitus, has made a video called Linux is Not for Everyone, and I wanted to take a look at it with you guys. So let's have a look at the video and have a discussion about is Linux for everyone? All right, so let's watch Chris's video and see what he has to say about this, huh?
Linux is not for everyone. And it's something that I need to come out and say because it'd be disingenuous to say, hey, 100% of the population can use Linux, because that's not really the truth. And I don't think I've ever really come out and just said that. But I wanted to make today's video about those that really shouldn't switch, or maybe can't switch because of certain limitations. Now with Windows, there's a bunch of programs. There's really two main software suites, which I've already gone over in past videos, but Microsoft Office and Adobe. Those will not work on Linux. You can possibly emulate older ones, and there's other things people have said, but I've gone down all of these options. I'm going to tell you, just no. Don't do it. If you're huge, you're stuck and have to have your Office or you have to have your Adobe, stick on Windows or switch to Mac.
That is most definitely true. If you need like the latest Microsoft Office, if you need Adobe Creative Cloud, you can dual boot. But those are really the only two reasons that I think anyone should be using Windows. If you need like Photoshop or something, get a Mac. Like, don't get Windows. Windows is garbage.
I do love both Adobe and Microsoft Office, actually better on Mac than Windows. But that's not really one of the only things keeping people on Windows. And the next up is games. You see, I use game streaming to cast this right here. And actually, as I quit out, I'll show you how I do this. But I use Destiny 2, I think is the biggest game that I play on here, or Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Both those games I will actually use on Windows. Both are easy anti-cheat. Both don't work on Linux. And, you know, it's just one of those things, you know. It's for 100% gaming compatibility, Windows is still king.
For 100% gaming compatibility, that is true. However, most of like the best games, and that's a subjective thing for me, the best games being single player games or local multiplayer games that don't require anti-cheat software. They work. I mean, just about every game works on Proton now. It's kind of crazy. Like, you're more likely to have a good experience with Proton than a bad one at this point. Things like Proton DB can help you like figure out if something's not working 100%. I think I played a couple rounds of Halo 3 from the Master Chief Collection on Proton without easy anti-cheat enabled. And I had my cousin Luke on this computer, and I was on this computer, and the only thing that didn't work was the audio, and it took like 2 clicks to get the audio working in Proton.
Most of the games on Linux, when you pull up, like, let's say Steam Library, which is where most people have the games, most of these do work. And if you're not technically adept, or you don't want to learn how to change a lot of the things in to get a game working, and you just want it to install and play, most of the Steam-based games do that. Even a lot of the games through what's called Lutris do that, but there's still some, probably 10 to 20% out there that don't. And yeah. I want to just point that out. So that kind of stinks when you're a hardcore gamer. For me, it's not a deal breaker, though.
Proton is incredible, and all it will take is for Epic Games to get their crap together and actually create easy anti-cheat for Linux. And then all that Steve would have to do is bridge the native easy anti-cheat with Proton. I mean, I think that it's that simple. And at that point, you know, gamers would be able to play whatever games they want. Like I said, this is a subjective thing, and I don't like playing online multiplayer games. Online multiplayer games are boring as hell to me. I have virtually no interest in playing online multiplayer games. Not even with my closest friends, let alone strangers. So the idea of playing like having to have a whole separate partition, a whole separate like OS on my machine just for that, I mean, that's so irritating. Like that idea, I just can't fathom that. So yeah, I guess Chris has a point. If you're one of those people that plays like PUBG or something, I don't even know if that's a relevant game anymore. If you're one of those people that needs easy anti-cheat and multiplayer games to work, then I guess Linux, at least for your gaming habit, isn't for you.
All right, now back over on the Mac now. I wanted to kind of just showcase this. I have Outlook installed. I have, I think, Adobe Acrobat Pro on here. A couple other ones. I like using those tools, even though they were actually originally made for Windows. It's just a little bit better. When it comes to Microsoft Office, even though you would think it would work better on Windows, it actually integrates and kind of is a little bit bulkier on Windows. So let's jump over onto Linux again and just kind of showcase what some of the alternatives are here. When it comes to Microsoft Office, honestly, just pulling up your browser and using Office Online or Gmail or those types of things, the online email clients I like a lot better. I don't like the archaic look of a lot of the mail clients on Linux, so I found myself jumping in and just using webmail, which I know that rubs people, some people the wrong way.
I would agree with that statement. Most of the email clients that are on Linux right now have a very archaic look. They look outdated. Don't get me wrong, I love Thunderbird. I use Thunderbird, but my GTK, my GNOME, my Adwaita loving self cringes every time I use it. It looks old. It looks outdated. But I mean, even things like Outlook looks absolutely terrible. Outlook is ugly. It's almost unusably ugly. And like, even if you're doing just account management, my several of my clients use Outlook as their primary email application, and like I have to manage Outlook for some of my clients. And if you open up account management, it's like the Office XP dialogues. Like, this is antiquated. It needs to be fixed. It's so bad, and everything is so like deeply buried in Outlook. So at least Thunderbird is actually usable, even though it looks a little outdated. But like, holy crap, Outlook is god awful. It is just terrible. Sorry, that was a rant about Outlook. This doesn't have much to do with this.
Other things when it comes to alternatives, I love GIMP now.
GIMP is great.
And I say now because this was a difficult software to learn coming from Photoshop.
Yes.
GIMP became kind of my best friend to where now I use it even if I was not even in Linux. So cool little alternative. Because this is probably the toughest transition I had going from Windows to Linux. I would say there's a project to make GIMP look more like Photoshop and act a lot more like it. I highly recommend you check that out.
If you're looking for an actual like something that's a little closer, like a one-to-one drop-in replacement for Photoshop on Linux, Krita is the way to go. I think it's called Krita. Krita, I don't know how you pronounce it. Krita, it's awesome. It has a lot of like the layer compositing features that at least the last version of Photoshop I used had, and I think that was like CS2 maybe. So this is a long time ago. But Krita feels a lot more like Photoshop to me out of the box. But I personally prefer GIMP. I think GIMP is a sublime editing tool. I absolutely love it. It took me a long time to figure out how to get good at GIMP, but once I did, boy howdy, GIMP I feel like gives you more tools. You just have to be able to use its workflow. You have to adapt to GIMP. GIMP won't adapt to you. So if you're accustomed to Photoshop, Krita might be the better way to go, but GIMP I think is more powerful in the long run, even if it's a little more technical. But I can see where Chris is coming from here, definitely.
When it comes to video editing, I've already touched on Mac's iMovie, and also in Windows, a lot of people use Premiere. But I don't really like any of these. I love Kdenlive. Kdenlive is what I edit all my videos on. I've edited probably around 1,000 videos in it now, and I just am never going to switch.
I would love to see how he actually made this video in Kdenlive. I've been making a lot more content like what you're seeing now, which is a lot like what the video that we're talking about is like. You follow me? Anyway, I'd like to see how he did it, because Kdenlive is awesome. Don't get me wrong. Kdenlive is what I use for all of my videos. Every video that's been edited on this channel, every video that I've done is using a combination of OBS and Kdenlive. I don't use any other video editor, but Kdenlive, holy crap, has so many rendering problems. The previous video that I did, the video with me and my girlfriend where we played Oregon Trail, I can't tell you how many glitches there are in that video. Like, I went through and I made sure that it was really nice and polished, and then you make one simple change and half of the video just collapses. Your transitions stop working, your compositing layers stop working. There's like a new feature where you can trace out a part of the frame that you want to have be transparent. It's called rotoscoping. And I started out doing the rotoscoping to edit out the rest of my desktop and just show the Macintosh.js in that video from last week. And halfway through the video, rotoscoping just decided to stop working. And then when I rendered the video out, the rotoscoping didn't apply to any of the footage. So it was like there was a sliver of the background layer, and then there was like this really weirdly framed desktop capture with us sitting in the corner, and it just did not work, and it drives me crazy. Kdenlive, I want you to be awesome. Please be more awesome.
So when I say Linux is not for everyone, I literally didn't think it was for me for the longest time. Linux works differently than both Mac and Windows.
Yeah.
And if you are so familiar with Windows over the course of 10 or 20 years, it's going to be very difficult for you to transition some of those habits over to Linux. And some things about Linux scare users, such as the terminal. Terminal can scare people, but I would just tell you this. If you learn not to be scared of it, you'll love it and you'll use it everywhere. You'll use it in Windows. Mm-hmm. In Windows, I use PowerShell a lot. Even the new Windows terminal application I've installed, and I use it on occasion just to do some bash commands and things like that in Windows.
Yeah, there are significant differences between Windows and Mac and Linux. Like, Linux is a completely different way of thinking about your computer. And he is right about the terminal. Like, there's not really any getting around it. Like, you will probably eventually on Linux need to use the terminal to do one thing or another. A lot of people say that's a bad thing. I don't think that it's a bad thing at all. Like Chris said, I mean, it unleashes your potential. It unleashes your computer. It lets you, as the user, have full control over the computer. But then again, there are a lot of people out there who do not ever want to touch a terminal because it's scary, because it's the fear of the blank page, right? That's what it is. You are sitting there and you don't know what the first thing to do is. I can understand that. For a long time, I didn't touch the terminal, but then you start to get the hang of it, and you realize you can like traverse directories. You realize that you have commands at your disposal that can do a lot of things that would take you a long time to do if you had to do them manually or with a graphical interface. There's a lot of things that on Windows you say, gosh, I wish someone would make a way to just do this and really quickly and easily, because I know computers can do this really quickly and easily. I just wish someone would make a way to do it quickly and easily. And Linux pretty much comes with all the tools that you could ever need to do any of that stuff. Now, the question is, are you willing to learn? Probably not. I mean, a lot of people are not willing to learn. Most people don't even care to learn. I mean, I've always said that Linux is like someone who's customizing their hot rod. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're computer enthusiasts, and most people are like car drivers. Like, they don't care. They want to take their car to the shop, get it repaired and keep driving it. And that's how most people are about computers too. I think that even those people who want to just take their car to the shop and have it repaired would be better off on Linux. Like, even if it means that they have to relearn a few things, I think that Linux is better for everybody.
Especially when it comes to package managers, which Linux is based around. Which, if you're not familiar with the package manager, basically just imagine typing one line, probably about 4 words in, and just having it download the program, install the program, and put it all the shortcuts and everything in without you having to do anything other than type 4 words and press enter.
Yeah, the package manager is kind of a foreign idea, or at least it was when I started using Linux. But I think that if you present the package manager to new Linux users as it's a Linux app store and all the apps are free, then people kind of get the idea, right? Like, and you can do the graphical interface stuff. You can use like GNOME software. You can use the whatever it is in Manjaro that they call it. But really, like, the command line is the way to go with the package manager. I love it. It's so great.
So that's the power of terminal, but it is definitely scary to some new users. So to end this out, the people Linux is not for is really that intermediate user that's been using Windows or Mac for 10 plus years, over a decade. And those are the people that have their software suites that might be specific to that operating system, that they know like the back of their hand. And transitioning from that to a Linux counterpart or a FOSS alternative, a free and open source alternative in Linux, is too much for them. And I get that. That person should not use Linux if they're not willing to make that transition. And that's why I was like, hey, it's disingenuous for anyone to say, hey, everyone can use Linux, because I get that it's not for everybody.
The thing is, I feel like Linux can be used by anybody. It's just there's like 2 really specific things that make it harder for people to use Linux. And I know I'm probably like splitting hairs here, and I'm probably the kind of guy that he's talking about in this video, honestly. I mean, unless you're using Adobe Creative Cloud or Microsoft Office, or you play online multiplayer games, those 3 things, unless you're doing any of those 3 things, or maybe you have like industry specific software that's only available for Windows, you can use Linux. And even if you have any of those 4 things, you can still use Linux. You can dual boot. Like, you can use a virtual machine. Now, I get it. Like, people are accustomed to Windows, and like having to relearn something is scary. I mean, even just like when I first started using an Android phone, like learning how to use an Android phone was more intimidating to me than switching from Windows to Linux. It really was. Like, it was a completely different user interface paradigm, and it was just awful. I hated it, and I still hate it. Like, honestly, I want a mouse and a keyboard.
It's not for everybody. You need to learn some stuff, and don't be afraid of terminal, because honestly, I couldn't recommend it to anybody other than maybe an old lady that's not computer savvy. So there's some caveats to what I'm saying here. If it's somebody that just uses a web browser like your grandma or your mom, that's just not very computer friendly, installing Linux and just saying, hey, here you go. Here's a browser. It's never going to get a virus. Or very rarely. They'd have to do a lot to get a virus. But let's just say it's going to be far more stable and reliable for them using a Linux browser. And if they're not a power user or an intermediate user, really, it's going to be a very easy transition for them. And they're probably going to like it a lot better than if you had Windows or even Mac for that matter.
So I guess what Chris is saying is that Linux is for beginners, console gamers, and experts, and that's it. The people who play PC games and the people who are very familiar with or rely on PC software, Linux is not for them. That's what Chris is saying, and I kind of agree. Like, before I was the Linux gamer, before I started my YouTube channel, I actually much preferred playing games on console. I didn't have a Steam account until Steam released for Linux. Seriously. I had a Humble account before I had a Steam account. I wasn't a PC gamer, and even to this day, I have a desktop PC plugged into my television, and I have wireless controllers so that I don't have to play sitting at my desk, because I just don't like playing games at my desk. It throws off my workflow. It screws with my brain. So that's what Chris says. I actually kind of agree with him. I think that Linux can be for everyone, except for a very small set of people with very specific exceptions. I want to give a special shout out to the 115 amazing people over on Patreon, including Files Copying. My dude, your support is truly appreciated. I'd love to know what you guys think about this. Leave a comment down below. It's really appreciated. I love to read your guys' comments. I read most of them when you leave comments, so let me know what you think down below. That's going to do it for now. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one, and have a blessed day.